Very good. One more very interesting conversation. I have MukundMohan, who is an angel. He has invested in some 7 or 8 companies. He has a very interesting history himself, and we're going to get into that very quickly. But Mukund, before we get into anything else, do you want to talk about the companies that you've invested? What kind of stories do you have there?
Sure. We've invested about 7 companies here in India, and a little over 20 in the US also. Most of the companies in India have they've been all over the spectrum, but I think we've mostly invested in the seed stage, which is the first round of capital. Typically involved with maybe 2 or 3 other folks invariably, other angel investors that we've invested along with. They've been in investments as diverse as restaurants. We've invested in obviously a lot of software and SaaS-based companies because that's my background. Also invested in a company that does cloud-based telephony and a company that does gesture recognition on the tablet.
Okay.
Mostly technology companies. What we don't invest in is we don't invest in education to a large extent. We don't invest in hotels. We don't invest in capital-intensive businesses to a large extent.
Okay. And what kind of philosophy drives you? What do you look for when you look at investing in a company?
So since we focus a lot on early stage, we only focus on 3 things. First, it tends to be the quality, background, and also the experiences that the entrepreneur themselves have. Roughly, I wouldn't say it's an exact science, but roughly about 70-80% of the weight is primarily just towards the person that's trying to drive it. Second is the quality of the idea itself. So we do, unlike a lot of other investors, we do care a lot about what they are trying to build and why is it that what they're trying to build is dramatically different or much more needed or much more useful than anything else.
How is it changing the world, basically?
Yeah. Well, I think at that stage, most entrepreneurs don't even know if they're going to change the world. They just say, this is what we're looking to do because we either had this problem or we think this is a problem, we want to solve this problem.
Fair enough.
So that's the second portion of it. The third portion of it, so that's the second, which is how good is the idea? What is the quality of the idea? How big is that? And of course, then we look at more traditional things like how big is the market that they're trying to tap into, what are the ways by which they're able to show traction really so far. And that usually is about another 10-20%. But as I mentioned, 60-70% is basically the individual. Because you come referred or somebody that I worked with before tends to have a lot more of an inside track than somebody that doesn't.
Very good. And let me ask you a separate question, man. What do you think makes a good investor? What is it that entrepreneurs should be looking for when they get into a conversation with an investor? What do you think differentiates the investor community? Is it obviously it's not just the money, right? So what else beyond money?
Color of money is the same with everybody. Right?
Absolutely.
So I think every investor can basically give you money. You should assume that is table stakes.
Yes.
And if you are the kind of person that is now looking to say, what else can I get from the investor? I would basically look for 3 things. What comes free, unfortunately, is expertise, knowledge, and connections. That's at least the second part of the table stakes, I'd say. So if they have done something relevant in the space you're trying to operate in, having been in the space for a few years gives them instant credibility to a certain extent, and also opens doors to people that you think would be necessary, required in some way, shape or form, either as a follow-on investor, as a potential customer, or even as an employee. So connections, of course, as a matter of being there. So expertise, which to a large extent, I think in India they call it either knowledge or mentorship in some way, shape or form. So that's first. That to me is at least the ability for the investor to be able to go ahead and provide expertise, knowledge, connections in the space, and also maybe internal connections itself to be able to hire people or to be able to get new customers. That's the first part of it. That's what I would look for in investors. The second thing that I would look for in investors is the ability to actually show empathy, which I think is rare with what a lot of entrepreneurs don't look for, because entrepreneurship, as I consistently tell most of the people that I talk to, is like a sine curve. I'm an engineer, so most of my analogies will be engineering related, right? It's more like, one specific moment you're like, oh my god, this is the worst thing I've ever started. To the next minute you're like, oh, I'm going to rule the world. And the third minute, customer calls and he says he's not interested in your product. And the fourth minute, the customer says he can maybe find budget for 2 weeks, 50 paisa for what you're doing, right? So it tends to be that way. So you look for someone who has either been through it someday before, or someone who can relate to you during the down times and also give you a little bit of support, maybe perspective in the upwards.
Okay.
And say, yeah, okay, all right, this is great, but realize tomorrow morning you're going to be down again.
Okay.
So empathy, I would say, definitely something that you should be looking for in an investor, in someone who can. And third is just the ability for them to be able to learn as much and have a longer term view. Because most investors tend to have a horizon of between, depending on how you look at it, in the angel round, it's somewhere apparently in India between 3 and 5 years, which I think is still a little more short term. Whereas 5 to 10 years, you want someone who's got that kind of horizon who can help you in the longer term, as opposed to show me the next quarter's report. Because in the sales stage that we invest in, there's no point in looking at monthly numbers, quarterly numbers, even annual numbers.
Very cool. So the 3 E's, eh? Expertise, empathy, and extended period through which you can stay with it. That's a framework. Very, very cool.
That's the marketing.
I can't hide my. How do I call it? Absolutely. Very cool. Let's talk about you. You've had a very interesting journey, haven't you? You spent 16 years in the US. You were running a $250 million business for HP, and you've been doing a truckload of things in the US as well. Do you want to talk about your journey so far, Mukund?
Sure. So I graduated as an engineer from JC myself, and then I went and did my graduate also in computer science, University of Melbourne. Went to work for Cisco for a couple of years, very much as an engineer. Started my first company, sold that. Started another one. One was in auto fulfillment. Second one was in reverse auction systems. Sold that also. Then I was at HP for the longest time. Started as a product marketing, and then started running sales and managing a fairly large business unit. It was part of Mercury Interactive. Then I left HP, Mercury Interactive in 2008. Started another company called BuzzGain. Sold BuzzGain about 2 years ago, almost a year ago. 2010, 2011 is when I sold it. It was a software as a service company in the social media monitoring space. Sold to a company called Meltwater in the US. And then after that, I've been helping entrepreneurs, I've been investing, I've been trying to start another company. So that's what I've been doing.
Very cool, very cool. And this is a guy that has sold 3 companies. Obviously for truckloads of money, so you can sort of imagine. One is the patina of success that he himself has, and the second is obviously the kind of ideas as an entrepreneur that he brings to the table. So clearly you are one of those investors that you guys should be seeking out. Absolutely. Right? Anyway, congratulations for everything you've done, and best of luck, Mukund. It's been a pleasure knowing you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Cheers.